Hello, everybody. I'm Pilar Fernández-Pisón. I'm a PhD student from the University Carlos III de Madrid. And my PhD, I do it in close collaboration with CERN. So the results that I'm going to present here, I did all the experimental part there, okay, with their equipment. So yes, I'm going to start. So fracture of austenitic stainless steel at cryogenic temperatures. Yeah, okay, sorry, can we do it with the PowerPoint? Because this is super horrible. The quality is very bad. Can we do it better with the PowerPoint? I'm very sorry, but it's very, very ugly. Sorry. Because in my computer it was okay. Exactly, because in my laptop it was fine. And I saw some presentations before, and it's a pity that after putting. Okay. Okay. Well, it's not much better, but I will work with that. So this kind of study is important, is interesting for application that use high field superconducting magnet system. So this is the case, for example, of the LHC at CERN, for sure, and also, for example, the fusion reactor system for ITER. So in both cases, they need to cool down the magnetic system to cryogenic temperatures in order to have the superconducting state. The problem is that these cryogenic temperatures are affecting not only the magnet system, but also all the structural materials that you need to place around in order to counteract the strong magnetic forces. And this structural material is made of austenitic stainless steel. That's why it's important to study the mechanical behavior, and in particular the fracture behavior of austenitic stainless steel. So what we have done is to focus on two of the most dominant grades for this kind of applications, that are the AC304L and the AC316LN. And the first thing that we have done is uniaxial tensile test at 3 different temperatures: room temperature, liquid nitrogen temperature, and liquid helium temperature. And here you have the stress-strain curves. So as you can see there, we have high ductility, strength, and toughness for the two grades at the 3 different temperatures. Indeed, in fact, this is one of the reasons why they are using this kind of grades for this application. You might be wondering now why we have these very interesting serrations for these two grades at 4 Kelvin. I'm very sorry, but I'm not going to explain that in this presentation, but if you are interested, we can talk later, or you can send me an email or whatever. I'm going to focus in another very interesting phenomenon, okay, for this austenitic stainless steel at cryogenic temperature, the strain-induced martensitic transformation. So, those two grades, they suffer this transformation from the austenitic phase to the martensitic phase. So as you can see here, when you deform the material, the content of martensite increases. And this we can see it also in the microstructure. So we have performed EBSD mapping, and you can see that in the beginning everything is red. Red is the austenite, and then when you start increasing the strain, you start having blue, martensite, okay? And this is very important for our application because the martensite, is less ductile than the austenite, and also is ferromagnetic. So it can influence the external magnetic field of the magnet system, and we don't want that. So that's why it's very important to study this and the evolution, and in particular what is interesting for me is to study the influence of the martensite in the fracture behavior of the material. That's the topic of my PhD. So let's see first the evolution of martensite for these two grades at the three different temperatures. And as we can see here, for the AC316LN, at room temperature in gray, we don't have any transformation. Okay, but now at cryogenic, we do have a transformation. And this transformation goes faster at 4 Kelvin and start earlier too. For the AC304L, you can already see, it's quite obvious, that the transformation is higher, it's more intense. At room temperature, we already have a transformation, and then at cryogenic temperature, it's quite extensive, you can see there. And what is also very interesting is that it's almost the same for the two temperatures, 77 and 4 Kelvin. This I will go back later, okay, so remember that. Very good, so I have already showed you, I have been talking about the flow behavior of the two grades. Let's now focus on the fracture behavior, which is what is interesting for us. So, what I have performed is elastoplastic fracture toughness test at cryogenic temperatures, mode 1. As you know, I guess, because we have been seeing a lot of presentations this morning and this evening about this, this is quite complex. We have a lot of steps until we are able to construct the GR curve based on the initial and the final crack sizes and on the raw data during the test, load versus load line displacement. So the whole procedure, I have done it according to the standard ASTM 1820, but the construction of the GR curve I have been using 4 different methods. So we are going to compare it now, okay, to see what is the difference between them. So 3 of those methods are compliance methods, which means that we need to perform unloading, reloading sequences during our test in order to estimate the crack size. And then the last method, the 4th method, is a normalization method. We are using the one described in the standard. The difference between the 3 compliance methods is that the first one, which is the official method described in the standard, it just assumes, it's quite easy, it just gives you the equations, and it just assumes that as the crack grows, the stiffness in the specimen decreases. So the compliance increase is what you can see more or less in this image. Now, regarding the other 2 compliance methods, this one was proposed by Weiss and Nylas. That's why we have here the WM. According to them, what they did realize is that the stiffness is not always decreasing, but at the initial state of the test, the stiffness is increasing, which will lead to a negative crack extension, which of course doesn't make sense. The crack is not decreasing and then increasing. So according to them, this phenomenon, the negative crack extension, is apparent negative crack extension, is coming because there is some strength hardening in the plastic zone ahead the crack tip during blanting. So they did propose a method, I'm not going to go here in detail, but they proposed a method to correct this phenomenon, and also propose a method to correct the crack sizes, because it's not always super well estimated with the compliance. So this is the original version of this method, and we have then the modified version. This one, we have proposed it. And it's exactly the same as the original one. We are just adding an extra step, that is the calculation of the J value based on the corrected value of the crack sizes, because the J value is a function of the crack size. So we thought that it's more accurate to recalculate it using the corrected values. So that's all. Those are the 4 different methods. Let's now compare them for the case, for one fracture toughness test that we did for the AC304L at 77 Kelvin. So we have the compliance method, the ASTM compliance method in red. We see here the negative crack extension. You see, the points goes to that side and then it increases. The problem here, that we have 2 points in the qualified area. So we have to use, according to the standard, we have to use those 2 points to calculate the regression power law line, which, as you see now, is not representative of the rest of the point. And then you have here the GQ, that of course is not representative either. So this method is not suitable for us. This is the conclusion. Then, if we move to the Weiss-Nylas compliance method in green, we have it here. Now we have corrected the problem of the negative crack extension. We don't have it. And as we have corrected also, the crack size is quite soft. Then we have the yellow, that is the modified version. The difference is just that it lies above. Why? Because we have recalculated the J value. This is the difference. And then if we compare it with the normalization method, you can see that the gray and the yellow are quite similar, okay? So our conclusion, better to use the normalization method. Why? because it's more simple to perform the test. You don't need to do the unloading, reloading, and because it's also it's easier, to do the post-processing later. Okay, so now we understand the four methods. We have said that better the normalization. Let's now see the results for the two different grades at the two different temperatures using the normalization method. Okay, is what I'm presenting here. 3, because we did 3 valid tests. Problem. I'm not showing here the result for the AC316 LN at 77 Kelvin because we don't have results. The crack did not propagate for the opening range of our clip gauge. So I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to show what I have, okay? That is enough. Okay, so let's see. For the AC304L, what we see is that the fracture toughness is higher at 77 than at 4 Kelvin, and quite high values if you see. And then if we compare at 4 Kelvin, what we see is that the AC316LN is higher, the fracture toughness, than for the AC304L. Let's move now to the martensite content. So what we are seeing here is after the test, we have half of our specimen, and we do a micrograph stitching on this area, so we can see, yeah, you cannot read anything, but you can see here part of the pre-cracking area and then part of the fracture toughness area. And you see in dark the martensite and in light the austenite. So for all of them, we see that the higher content of martensite is in the fracture surface. Why? Because it's where we have the higher deformation. Then if we compare for the 304L at 77 and at 4 Kelvin, we see that we have more at 77 Kelvin. And now is when you have to remember what I told you in the past. The evolution of the martensite was quite similar for the 304L at the two temperatures, 77 and 4 Kelvin. So the fact that we have here more martensite than here, it means that this specimen was submitted to a higher plastic deformation. Okay, this is the reason. Now, if we compare at 4 Kelvin the AC304L with the AC316LN, we see, I hope you can see, maybe not super well, but you can trust me, that here we have more martensite than here. And it makes sense because we saw that the transformation was higher for the AC304L than for the AC316LN. So I have already, I don't know if I was going very fast, but I have already presented you all my experimental results. What I'm going to tell you is what I'm doing right now. That is my objective now is to keep studying this problem, but now with simulations. So I want to do simulation of fracture toughness test in a homogenized model taking into account this transformation. So I have already developed a constitutive model where I'm taking into account this transformation, and I'm using a homogenization, mean field homogenization method. I have already implemented it in Abacus, and now I have to start with the simulations. So I haven't started yet, but I'm quite happy if you could give me any advice of how to simulate propagation of crack in a ductile material. I have already seen some presentations during today, so I guess I will approach some of you to see how you did it, but if you have some tips to tell me, please, I'm super happy to hear all of them, okay? And I'm almost done. The conclusions. So I have shown you a quite comprehensive characterization of the fracture toughness of two of the most dominant grades for this kind of applications, AC304L and AC316LN. What we have seen is that when we compare the 4 different methods to calculate the GR curve is that all of them are similar in terms of the points, but then we recommended the normalization method. Then if we compare the fracture toughness between the AC316LN and the AC304L, we have seen that for the 316LN is higher. And for the AC304L, it was higher at 77 than at 4 Kelvin. And regarding the martensite, the content of martensite was higher for the 304L than at 316LN, and for the 304L was higher at 77 than at 4 Kelvin. If you are interested in all this experimental data, we have published these results in this paper in the Journal of Engineering Fracture Mechanics. And that's all. I think in the end I did it in the time, so cool. Thank you very much.